Could anybody? Okay. Could anyone hear me? Okay. I hope that you can hear me. Okay. Now, I do hope that the sound is hearable right now. Does anybody get to hear me? Let's see. Is there any sound coming through? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It took a little while to set it up. The sound is on. All right. Great. Okay. So today's lecture is going to be on positional sacrifice. I'm going to be talking about how and when we can make it and how to think about it in order to make it work. So we're going to start with a game between Vishy Anand and Wang Hao, two amazing grandmasters, and basically White's decision on how to handle this position or the pawns and everything in a better way. So I'd like you to think about this carefully. Now, I just saw you got a question. One of you said, Valeri, have you ever studied these courses? I remembered you saying in webinar only studied 3 chess books, and other than that, mainly learned from your dad. Well, everybody learns differently, that I can tell you. I think some people learn well from books, others learn well from videos, and third party learn well from just by playing games and analyzing master games. I'm personally the person who learns well in 2 ways, by working through master games and by working through videos, because videos give a lot of insight. The course that you're seeing beneath the video, the Ginger Grandmaster course, that's being offered for an incredible price. It's like 110 hours of video training by top grandmasters for like $40 or something. It's incredible, and one of the reasons is because it really provides a lot of value to how not only positional sacrifices work, but how a lot of middle game concepts are really happening or supposed to happen in our games. It's incredible. I think videos are excellent for studying because, in my opinion, when it comes down to studying books, it could be a little stale as we don't get to realize many of the subtleties of the position. But in videos, the author is explaining them. So especially if you have a grandmaster teacher or somebody who really knows what he's doing, he could really explain it in a way so that you don't only understand, but you can apply that knowledge into your next games. So to answer your question, yes, I think you can do anything, but videos are essentially important to help your understanding of the game improve. So even though it doesn't necessarily mean you can bring that knowledge instantly into battle in your next games, it does the first step, the most important step, to let you know and let you understand it. So it's up to you to exercise and develop the skill. So, okay, now, have I studied those courses on the iChess? I have actually looked through them. I don't study courses right now at the level that I'm at. I mean, I do study videos for sure if I want to prepare in an opening. I do work through analysis of master games, but because of my level, I'm an international master, it's a little different. So if you're asking me, do you study like what we're studying? No. Obviously, for my level 2400, I need to study different things. But those courses are really good for you. And even for me, I'm picking up some really good ideas when I get a chance to listen at some videos selectively. Even for me, this is incredibly good. So let's get back to the position. Anand is white. What should white do now? Think about this. He's got a pawn up, a couple of double pawns, and then he's got to figure out exactly how to make this work. Now, how do I begin studying? Thank you. Did I play over the board games? Both. I actually did play over the board games, and I studied with my dad, who used to explain to me how things work and train me on this, like being able to apply that knowledge. Now, is knight c6 a good move? Yes, but it is white to move. White to move. What to do in this position? White's to play. Now, is a grandmaster title hard? Yeah, of course. Not everybody becomes a grandmaster. But personally with me, I decided to go on and teach a lot more. So essentially, that's why I stayed the international master and dedicated myself more to teaching others. Now, one of you said perhaps at one point c6 is good to activate the bishop. Sure, but if you play it now, that means black is just going to get that pawn. And that means not only that he's going to get the pawn, but it also means that he's going to attack our queen. So there we have a, you know, a set of problems. It's not just one problem. It's one problem after another problem after another problem. So it's really just about white trying to figure out how to move and make something significant, make something useful in its position. So take a second and tell me, what do you guys think white's got to do? Rook b1, not bad. But then black can play knight to c6, I think. You see, what white decided to do in this position was something very important. He actually figured out a way to make these pawns better through a positional sacrifice. Now, that's a really big idea, but he found a way to do it. This is where I want you to look at right now. What can white make so that his pieces improve and essentially his pawn structure just gets better? How could that happen? How could that be? So take a second and try to think about it yourself. What's white's most optimal way to continue at this point? And a very important question. What about rook b1? You see, I think that it's rook b1 is a good line, so you can pit the rook. But then black will just play knight to c6, so not much is going on. We can play queen a4, but I honestly think that it's the moment he drives our queen away, he'll probably even play a6. I believe also black can even try knight a6 in a way, because after bishop takes to a b takes to a, he will be occupying the c4 square very quickly with his knight. So it's a bit of a problem, I think. Okay, now another suggestion that I got is maybe in the c pawn to c4. Thank you for suggesting that. But the problem is it's just not helping much. He will do a6, drive our bishop, and then maybe he can play knight to c4. So that's a problem. We don't want to do that necessarily right now. And now I got a suggestion. Okay, so if we could play f4, f4 is not a bad idea, but then if we do it, the problem is it doesn't make any real threat. Black will still do the knight in a6. But if we play knight d4, which Anand did, now we have something completely different. This is perfect. The move of knight d4, played by Anand, helps, as if black actually captures the knight, white is able to get 3 fairly advanced pawns for the piece. In fact, he only has 2 pawns, which we know is not enough. At least 3 must stay there. But those 2 pawns, in fact 3 if we count them just in a sequence, those pawns are being incredible. They're attacking. They're ready to challenge. They can produce different sorts of threats. And it's not just the way on how this is going to work. It's also the way on how black's other pieces, like including that knight on b8 and the rook on a8 and a few of the others, are completely unable to, make something. So out of this, the variation becomes extremely powerful. After edicts to the now, what happens if black did not take the knight? If black did not take the knight, I guess he would have played maybe bishop d7. But then white's knight can jump on the f5, making it even more difficult, as the bishop pair, despite the pawn structure, the bishop pair can become incredibly strong when white thinks of f6 or even f4. That will be really good. So you get to see not only the strength, the power of each of white's pieces, but the effect of every single one of them onto black's position. It's amazing. So black couldn't really do this. What I want to show you with that knight d4 move, leave the rest. The important thing about knight d4 is how white sacrifices a knight. Now, is this enough to make this whole thing work? No, absolutely not. It is an interesting move, but it's definitely not enough. Now, what makes this move so special is the follow-up. So remember that positional sacrifice is good because of 2 things. One, the pressure that it can help you to create. and two, the follow-up to that pressure. Now, a lot of people get this wrong. They think that pressure is all they need, and they start because essentially almost every combination of this kind leads to pressure. Just like everybody says, "Oh, this is great. I look at that. What I'm getting. I'm getting this knight. I'm getting that piece. I'm getting this and that." And truth be told, that's not necessarily wrong. They're not necessarily wrong. What's wrong is that we don't need just pressure. What you need is a follow-up, a continuation, so that that pressure you're going to make is going to guarantee you something bigger, something more powerful as the game progresses. So what's really so interesting about that is how White is able to do this and then make it very powerful as the game progresses. Now take a look at this, because this is really interesting. As White played the move of knight at the d4 in this position, Black's got a limited number of moves and things. So what did he do? He took it, takes, and he plays knight c6. But then White plays queen c3. So you understand now it's not just about the sacrifice. It's about how White stands. The follow-up continuation. How to find a move like that in a real game? Thanks for asking. Think about what you need or what you don't have. I believe that starting with a question about the problem in the position is going to set you in the right mood. And then we say the pawns are a problem. It's just they're not helping us. We have the pieces, but the pawns are not good. And then you could sort of play through all these different ideas that may work. Right now, we could see that the pressure is there, the follow-up is there, and White resolves the main problem. So now we actually have this possibility to play with pawn up to d5, and just in fact, actually we have this d5, d6, or maybe even e5. So we're setting everything in motion. Okay, and let's see what happened in the game. Then after the move of pawn takes the d, then Black played knight bc6, queen c3, and knight e7. Well, Wang Hao's idea of fighting back was actually pretty smart. He's ready to sacrifice back on the d5 in case we move it, or just make a solid blockade so we don't get to push any further. It was a really decent candidate, I suppose. So this is pretty important. So what do we do now? If we play d5, we're gonna likely lose it, and if we don't, it's gonna be different. So what do we do now? You know what? This reminds me to one of my actual experiences in such a position where I feel like I have everything and I can't do anything. It was, I wouldn't say awful, but it was like a very uncomfortable experience. And then I realized that in a lot of these positions, I'm not supposed to do anything special, but just improve. What Anand did here was excellent. He played the move of rook to d1. He didn't think necessarily about a way to break through. He just wanted to keep growing. And that's what I mean by having a continuous follow-up. Taking the opportunity to improve your pieces and play this positionally is what actually makes the sacrifice positional. Now, I want you to distinguish the positional from the tactical sacrifice. The tactical sacrifice is usually a quick cut sacrifice, which comes as a jump, and it requires a very fast approach for you to take on. Now, if you do this kind of sacrifice, fine, no problem. But a lot of the times these sacrifices exist at the very end of our strategy. This means until that point, we may not be ready. You may not be ready. So what do? Then it is kind of important to decide that you actually do the positional sacrifice. Now, not every time, that's for sure. But in this position, we just do it because we know it's important. Okay, so what we do is the move of after rook to d8, white figured out that there is one more excellent improvement. Now, you guys suggested very cool moves, f4, king h1. But you know what Vichy did was bishop to f2. And it was an incredibly special move, as right after bishop f2, then the bishop is coming down through g3. And then we could see that this bishop is going to go to the d6. We've got d5, and we've got a lot of other things coming out, from the position in a quick time. It's great. Let's just go over and keep the challenge on. After the move of bishop f2, black played a6, bishop to the g3, queen c8, and now bishop to the f1. So ultimately what we're seeing is that there's like an avalanche of pawns ready to move towards the center. So black had to do the move of pawn up to the b6. And now what do we do? See, black saw the danger. He wasn't really thinking so much about how bad it is going to be. He just saw that, oh, wow, you know what? This is going to hurt. This is actually going to hurt me very much. Those pawns and those pieces behind them, it was painful. So black is making a serious attempt to try and go ahead. Now, one of you asked, what is the exact program of the I'm using Fritz right now, like, Fritz 15, I think. So now, what if black plays f5 in this position? Well, he can do this move, but then we're just going to play with d5, or maybe we can even just capture the knight. So he couldn't do it. He had to protect and then challenge. Now, rook c1 actually got us a suggestion. You were very right. We got to get that rook into the play. You know what? One of the greatest players of the 20th century, Zygmunt Taras, used to say, if one piece stays badly, the whole game is bad. And while it's more of a metaphor, really, you have to know that he was right. In its very core, if we keep a rook on the a1 like that, it's never going to get into play. So we got to get it better. Now, how do we do that? It's a completely different story, because moving it through the c1 will likely bring black to the ability of playing knight b3, and I don't get to like all the consequences that this knight can produce by moving on to b3. So a little better rook b1 kind of move, as I just got a suggestion, just does the trick. We have the b3 square covered, so black can't move in there anytime fast, and we are perfect. We have the space. We got the we got the possibility. We have the ability to block him, so he doesn't actually create any real trouble to our position from there, and we're good. Yeah, it's a really, really good move. What I love about this is just how fast this actually makes it. Like, so right now, the moment we play with rook to the b1 and now b3 is being covered, it really cuts off the majority of black's actual possibilities. So now knight b3, it was what he played in order to challenge us in the c5. That's what Wang Hao did. And I want you to think very carefully as to what is white's best way to continue here and cause a problem against black's position. Now take a second to think. It's a very, very important question. What should white do or play with so that things can work out? Now, you said d5. I don't like that type of a move, although I have to say to you that d5 is interesting. It's a forcing move. Now, if we did that, I guess the bishop and the knight would have been both attacked. So in case black plays with queen takes to the c5, white could do move queen takes to the c5, knight x to the c5, and then we have d x to the e6. So in any respect, we have this threat against the b6. We got the bishop on c7, and I actually feel like this is a pretty solid candidate. It's a good version of how we can make it. Is this the best? Here's where the disappointment comes. I don't think this is necessarily too bad. However, the problem is it just doesn't, come out necessarily as perfect. What I'm saying is that White's got another way to do it. He's got something else, something more relevant, more powerful, that could impact the position on a deeper level. So I need you to think carefully here. What else could White do that will force the events in a better way? Bishop to d6, rook takes to b3, not a problem. Both of them may work. Even bishop c4 may work. Absolutely. But the reality is that White didn't want to do any of those moves. The reality is that what White decided to do, what he discovered that he wants to do, was a very different move. Okay. And it was absolutely beautiful. What was it about that? It was about the candidate move of rook takes to b, not the d5, not the bishop d. Rook. I just saw it. I mean, like, it's so pretty, really. I mean, think about this. What is White really doing? Nothing special. He just wants to take down the piece that was causing all these problems. This was the knight right now. So we take down the knight, and we're leaving him in a position where most of Black's pieces just can't do anything. Take a look. Now this is a big position to really discuss. Right after the capture, rook takes to b3, with all these things coming out and bursting out of White's position. Black's only hope was to take back with the bishop. Okay. White does queen takes to the b3, b takes to the c5, and now there is d5. You see what White is doing? He doesn't look for a way to win. And that's very, very important. He does not look for a way to win the game. So what is White doing then? Well, what he's doing is that he is really trying to just keep the pressure over Black for as much as he can. And he wants to do it in a way so that basically Black does not go for moves like knight c6. He does not go for moves like, with a queen coming out and everything. We're doing it absolutely perfect. No chance for Black to escape. No possibility for him to run away. Let's just hold him back there so he has more than just one or two things to worry about. It was a great idea. And it was beautiful. I mean, like, the reality of the situation is that after the move of pawn to d5, with the fact that Black has so much on his mind to worry about, he doesn't get to have too many things. So what is he actually doing? See? Knight pawn to d5, knight g6. And can anyone recommend me what would be the best way to go to keep the pressure? We have strong pawns, good bishop. We're an exchange down only, but that's fine, considering how good this position looks. I want you guys to tell me, what do you think should be White's best approach at this point to make more threats or even bigger challenges against Black's position? Now take a second and think very carefully. What is White's best way to go? As I get to see this position, I realize how good this looks for White. I mean, the strong pawn on d5, the bishop from g3, The fact that black is fairly behind and backward, and just the everything associated, everything connected. It's a lovely position, but how to make this work? How to make this work? Beautiful. It's really just like one of the most energetic type of positions that we could say. But Queen B6, can we do that type of move? I like that. I really do. Because you see, if we play with the move Queen to the B6, we're just going to attack him pretty quickly. And that's what you want. You know, you don't want to win here. I mean, you want to, but you're not going to. What you're really looking for is a way to keep your opponent longer in the bad position, because the longer you keep your opponent in the bad position, the worse it's going to get. And the worse it gets, the more difficult it becomes for him to stay alive. After bishop takes to a6 and then queen to the d7, white plays with the move of bishop to the b5, which is especially powerful at this point. We get to see the queen and the bishops really reaching out and creating multiple threats versus black's position and his king. The bishop comes out on the b5, so his queen has to go down to f7. And then as black gets to move with the queen on f7, white played even e takes f. See how calm white is? He knows that the danger does not realize as long as we just keep the position strong. And so you get to find out, in fact, just probably we can concentrate on bishop c7, bishop c6, d6 is a great way to go. This is an excellent idea. So e takes f, black plays queen takes f5. Now white does queen takes to the c5, rook c8, queen b4, and after rook fd8, a4, black resign. I mean, it was an incredible thing, because this speaks for the one major goal that comes out in such a position. And you see, the major goal is keep your opponent under pressure. If you could find a way how to keep your opponent under pressure, you will realize how big this will become. It's a great idea. It was really effective. It was very well made. And yeah, I mean, that was basically it. Most of the black pieces were just completely unable to to do much. And then so after the move a4, we got a5 coming up any second there. And he is in trouble. The rule number one concept in these positions is keep the opponent under pressure. From the very beginning, starting with the sacrifice, white got this pawn avalanche, but not because he wanted to use it necessarily for an attack, not because he wanted to use it in order to make threats, but because he wanted to just keep the opponent backward. Every single move along the way was just for that idea. Let's keep him on the backside. Let's make him go, get a little worse. And it worked out perfectly after rook f to the d1, and rook f d1, rook d8, bishop f2. I like the fact that at every single moment, white knew what he was missing. This is rarely what we ask ourselves in games. How often do you ask yourself, what am I missing in this position? What is it that I don't have? What is it that I'm struggling with? Do you ask yourself that? Maybe you do. But the reality is you don't do it so often. I mean, we don't get to do it so often. So one of the most important rules is to constantly just think about the things that we're missing, the ideas that are necessary, and that will help. Anand Vishy just made it in this brilliant game. And I want to recommend you that, you see, this is not something that you can learn over the course of one day. If you want to learn the concepts of being successful or good in these positions, I recommend you to work hard and just remember how each principle could work like this, like step by step. But White just made it so beautiful. In any case, if anybody wants me to send him a PGN of this game or others, you can send me an email to, just wanted to give you the email to valeri.lilov@gmail.com, or maybe to my website, which is tigerlilov.com. I'm going to post links on the chat so you could send it over and I would love to send you all the different annotations connected with that game so you can go over it again. Now you've just asked, one of you just asked, why resign? Well, because in the end position, black is helpless. Tell me one thing that he can do in this situation. There is nothing he can do, nothing at all. There's no check, there's no challenge, there's no threat. You know, it was a hopeless position. White just keeps moving the pawn, and then black just gives up. I mean, really, d6 and d7, the two bishops, and white's bishop is going to go directly. So now that is what you're looking for when you create a strong pawn structure in piece development. This is how you make it work. If you want to learn more, I do recommend you to check out the link below this video, which basically covers the I think the 110 over 110 hours of grandmaster instruction on sacrifices, positional play, or anything similar related. It's the full Ginger Grandmaster collection at 60% discount just for a few hours. So take advantage and look it up. I'm guaranteeing you it's worth your time, and it's worth your it's worth your consideration. It's a great package. So I just sent a link on the chat as well. You can check it beneath the video link as well. So let's take a look and see another instructive example that illustrates how a positional sacrifice is supposed to work. The game we're going to see was played between Garry Kasparov and Ralph Akison in the World Championship Juniors when Kasparov was still very young. He was playing under 20. And it was a pretty revealing game, this one. I'm not going to tell you what happened. I'm just going to tell you that it was exciting to see an incredibly strong player of that caliber playing. And White obviously has an incredibly good position at this point. I want to say that because it is true. He's got the super good knight, those pawns from the backside, even the bishop, including the bishop, the queen, and a few others. I love White's position. There is no doubt about that. So the question then is, okay, if I love the white position, what does he do? Does he get to attack? Does he get to not attack? What does he get to do? So what I want you guys think is, what will be your thoughts about this position and how you think White is supposed to make his own game stronger here? Take a second and give me your ideas. What should White do now? Now, one of you said, can you explain Koto's central pawn structure? Now, this lesson is not on pawn structure, so though if you have a particular question, I'll be more than happy to answer it. It's basically about, positional sacrifices, so I think that makes sense. So think about this position as White, and let me know, what should White do right now? Looking at this, I feel like White's got a lot of potential. Now, see, before you sacrifice, that's one of the first things that you need. Good potential. If you don't have a good potential, you're not gonna make it work. G4 is a possibility, for sure. But if we go for a move like G4 just like that, I'm not sure if this is gonna work too well. I mean, let's check it. Let's think about that. If we go for a move like G4, there's a good chance he will simply play with well, what can you do actually? I'm thinking e takes f, g takes f, then after that, what, maybe knight x d4. It's a pretty bad idea because then he's going to destroy the pawns in the middle and then keep up. So that's not going to work. Now, one of you said maybe what White can try is knight takes f7. Well, this is interesting, but you see, every sacrifice must be backed up with some very good follow-up. The problem of this sacrifice is that I don't really get to see what will be the effect. I mean, black will even play e takes f in this position, destroying our pawns. And then by the time we figure it out, you would already take e4 or our knight if he doesn't want to go allow f takes d. It's an interesting move, but ultimately doesn't work. Can we do rook f3 or f takes d6? Well, f takes d will just help black to stabilize and feel comfortable. Rook f3, I guess, makes the sense, but then you will just take down the pawn and destroy our center. Disrupting it will just make it very bad. So those two moves don't work either. Maybe we could try playing bishop c1, but that's too backward. No, you don't want to make moves like that in a position that's so open. Finally, knight g4 also looks backward, and even though it will give us the chance, this is a good reason that we're going to get a strong-looking queen. I feel like after the exchange, e takes f, rook takes f, and likely bishop to the a6, he'll be ready to trade off our light square bishop and just, like keep it up. So I don't necessarily think that it's such a good candidate. So that's pretty interesting. What we could do is, I just got a very interesting suggestion, so thank you for that. What if we actually play the move of pawn to d5? Now this is a really good question. So what happens if we do that kind of move? I love the move of pawn to the d5. And not only because it's a good-looking idea, but also because what we realize is that as soon as this move takes place, dark square bishop, the one from b2, can open a good road. It could help us to challenge against the black king side, and we are starting in a really good way. I find this a very lovely move. Now, I don't want to say again that this is perfect or it's like, oh wow, look at this, it's just awesome. No, not at all. I want to say, however, that it is a very beautiful candidate that sets up an excellent shot that we need for this position. Now, the rule number one about these positions always happens to be activate your pieces. They're way too complicated, so we can find a simple solution. For this reason, what we need to do is to concentrate our attention on a way to open. The move that we just do right now helps white to fantastically open up the game, especially the dark square bishop, and set certain shots, like challenges, immediately against the black king side. It was an excellent move. Now, of course, it has to be calculated, because in the end of the day, we're sacrificing a pawn. Now, this is the minimal sacrifice. But then after the sacrifice, we see that the dark square bishop gets open. So white's got another beautiful move to follow it up with, and that's knight g4. Now, I guess the question of every single one of you is like, okay, this is nice. Now, how? Okay. How are we able to know that a sacrifice of that kind is actually going to work, and if we're good enough to make it work? Now, truth be told, there is no way. But the most important thing you would like to understand is that when you're making an actual sacrifice, the sacrifice itself has got to be one that gives you like something really important in the position. And then we could see that suddenly the dark square bishop is going to be an excellent way to follow. In case black plays with knight takes to the g, then there's queen takes to the g, and then we have the g7 under attack. The black king is in a horrible position, and it's amazing. So let's see what really goes on after knight g4 is a huge problem for black. He had to exchange it so we can have queen takes g4 and then f6. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, Valeri, hold on here. He's going to take there, and then he could stabilize, right? No, he can't. If he did that, I'm guessing that white would have just played a normal knight h6 plus, now if he takes, checkmate. Or, as a matter of fact, if he moves like that, trying to run, then we've got the chance to even take him down on the g7, taking the g7, and then f6 check. So if he moves back with the king on h8, we can do queen g4, rook g8, knight takes f7. Or if he plays with the king g6, the other idea is we could do king to rook f5, and then we realize the threat of queen h5 is actually being pretty. So the reality of the situation is that as soon as this move is made, white starts an initiative. Now, that idea has a lot to do with what really positional sacrifice is all about. Initiative presents the opportunity for you to set up a move or a threat after another, after another, after another. And as you progress, setting up each and every one of those threats against your opponent, you're not going to give him time to escape or stabilize. So now black plays f6, his only good-looking move, I'd say, to keep the position together. I think it's pretty important. He stabilizes, tries to be in place of everything, just choosing a nice blockade against our bishop. So what do we do now? E5 sounds like an excellent idea because we've got the f6 going, and then we can challenge against the g7. It's a pretty nice thing to do because we've got the queen in g4, but I'm not sure. So you like to be thinking carefully about this. It's a very important position. So let's think about that. Does anybody have a suggestion? Bishop, absolutely. If we play bishop c1, no. This is backward. Forget about it. Backward moves are never going well. Whatever you're thinking about it, forget it. The backward move is going to get you in a bad position with bad moves. It's just no. No. If you start an attack, a backward move is supposed to be done only when there is an absolute high necessity. Okay? If there is no high necessity, we don't want to make backward moves. Okay? We don't want to make backward moves. Backward moves are bad. They're generally not that good, and we're going to be in trouble if we make them. What white wanted, what he sort of needed actually, was the move of bishop takes f6, which simply destroys their position immediately in front of the black king. And as the pawn progresses going forward to e5, we realize that black may be a piece ahead. He was a pawn ahead, that is a piece ahead, but it doesn't matter. Because deep down we realize how terrible his pieces are at actually serving a good defense and helping himself to defend. This is a really great opportunity to advance and actually just make it work. It's suddenly there's absolutely nothing that he can do. There's absolutely nothing a black can do. There's absolutely no way on how he can make anything work. And it's great. I mean, if you really think of it, it's just white's last move is beautiful. The move of pawn up to the e5, then we realize that there's f6. There is a challenge against the g7 and the h7. So after the e5 move, black plays rook h6 as an only way, good looking way to protect, and then white does a move of f6 in his position, rook c7 and e6. You may say black just did not play it so precisely, but in reality, he made the big mistake, and who wouldn't? See, under pressure, people make mistakes. You probably should have played a move of rook f7. Now, one of you asked, okay, Valeri, you once told me don't let sacrifice unless you're sure. How can we be sure? Well, that's what I've been talking about so far. Pressure, follow-up, making sure the risk isn't that big. I mean, if you're sacrificing a queen is that big. These look like crazy sacrifices. How can you think of these? Didn't you tell me not to do it until we got follow-up? Well, there is a good follow-up. Follow-up does not mean a win. It means pressure. It means a win if it's a tactical sacrifice. But if it's a good pressure, and you're sure your opponent can get off the hook in the next 5 to 10 moves, then it's a good thing. Oh yeah, after rook f7, there's f6, rook c f8, and then rook f4. White, I think white would have still been very successful, but at least we could say that black would get some counterplay. d4. He'd be able to hold this position a lot better. Unfortunately, he didn't. After the move of e5, you played rook h6. And then my question is, how, like after rook h6, okay, so we play with f6 or e6, queen d8. How would you guys think white should finish him? Anyone? I mean, there's a lot of firepower, a lot of strength that white is, put into play here. And I really like, just positions of this kind, where there's this great pressure and challenges and threats. I love that. I really do. But how to make this work? That is the good question of the day. How to make this work? As I get to think about the position, the first thing that comes to my mind is there's got to be some kind of a trouble, like some sort of a challenge or a threat or, pressure we can create. I don't know how, but something has got to happen here. The only query is how. It's a good thing to have something strong, but how do we do this? It's a different thing. It's a very different story. So anyone, the e7, totally. Cut off the g7, and they will sacrifice. Not really. If they take the e7, we have the g7 hanging, so that's not really going to happen. Not in the way as black is thinking. And then we could see the real drama. Like there's no way in how black could save the big material. In fact, when he sacrifices the rook, we've given away a bishop and the pawn, but then we're winning the rook. So after f takes d7, queen takes d7, and now rook bc1. You realize the damage that white's pieces are going to create. Black plays queen d8, and then white plays now with the move of queen f5. It's amazing. Strong development, a lot of firepower, and then the possibility to stand up with moves like queen f7. That I love. I mean, I don't want to say necessarily this is the best way to go, but it's like really just see this. It's effective. It's never about how like good or dangerous or bad or scary it looks. It's effective. What we need is tension. We got it. We need pressure. We got it. We need to force the opponent to react. And you got it. We got it all. Queen f5 was great. Black played queen b8, hoping that maybe he can checkmate h2. It was such a vague attempt for him to counterplay. But then he didn't succeed because in the end it was queen takes g7 and rook takes b7. So what can we learn from this example? Number one, you don't always have to sacrifice pieces, okay? And that's actually a funny thing to state, but then a lot of times we sacrifice pawns positionally. We give away a pawn to take the initiative, and then we think it's all safe because it's just one small unit. Yet oftentimes it can cost us the game. So the same rules as with a big sacrifice of a big piece like bishop and a knight or even a rook play with the sacrifice of a pawn. Yes, the risk isn't that great, but there is still a risk, and it's still great. So for this reason, I do want to recommend you, when you're in a position of that kind, focus your attention on, okay, what do I really need in this position? I need my bishop to play up. I need to find a way to create different threats. And it worked out so beautifully. With the d5 on the line and knight g4 to follow it up, every single move of white was forcing. And it was kind of beautiful to realize that, because with every single one of those candidates, we just kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him until at one point he couldn't defend it. I think it was a great example of Garry Kasparov. And if you want me to bring up some of these real brilliant highlights to you, I do recommend you to just send me a message on my email or through my site, and then ask me to send it over to you. It's great to see these positions again and sort of understand them a little better. So do send them to do send me a message if you want. Okay, now one of you just said today's chess is changing through the help of engines. We see 99% of tactical type games, so is it necessary to learn positional chess? Okay, all right. This is a good question. Only one of you has like okay, only 4 reasons, and that's why I love. No, there are many reasons, but there are only a few that you're asking about, and so I'll give it to you. First of all, engines and humans are something completely different. Now, when we're talking about engines helping our preparation, they can only help you so much. People can play all sorts of different things or in terms of opening. If you're analyzing your game, the engines cannot tell you anything but, okay, this move was good, this move was bad. And then essentially, you don't even know how to avoid that same mistake again. Human chess is much worse than the engines. But does that mean that as an art, it's distinct? It's not extinct for sure, because one thing is clear. It's always exciting. It's always different. So engines, are they better than us? They are. But the engine chess, the engine tournaments, they're very different. In terms of preparation, the engines can help us only in regards to the opening, if the opponent, and oftentimes 90% of the time it doesn't get to happen, if the opponent gets into the line we prepared. In regards to tactics, yes, it can tell you what tactic you missed so that you could feel bad about what you missed. But that's about it. And these are pretty, vague little things that the computer can make you more entertained about the game, but it really doesn't have to do anything with the creative process and the play. The other important thing is tactics versus positional chess. You have to understand this. Unless somebody blunders big time, which doesn't happen unless you're at the beginner level, or maybe it happens very rarely. Unless somebody blunders big time, tactics is only a product of a solid positional game. This means you can't have a good tactic if you don't have good preparation. And you can't have a good preparation without having a good plan. Therefore, you cannot have anything good tactically unless you have good positional plan. Now, you may want to argue with that, because you say, oh, but look at the games of Tal. Look at the games that are shown in the books. They always show that these tactics. And then I say, okay, but what you're really seeing is the final chapter, the final position where the tactic takes place. You're not seeing the preparation, or they don't emphasize on that. A lot of the books, a lot of the tactics emphasize so very much on the final result. Okay, so everything before is positional chess. You can't get to that final result if you don't plan, if you don't play positionally. So, 4 good reasons why it's important to know positional chess. 1, make sure that you know how to get to the tactical position, because unless your opponent blunders, you're never going to get there. Number 2, if you don't know positional chess well and you don't understand the principles of positional play, you're likely not going to be able to evaluate positions. So even if you look at a tactical line, you wouldn't know if you're actually ending up in a better game or not. So what's the use of being good tactician if you can't evaluate positions well in the end? Because the evaluation in the end is purely positional. So that, shows how important tactics and positional chess are when they are combined together. 3, you must work on planning in chess, because again, if you're only interested in the beautiful aspect of combinations, or just, you can go on with studies show them, composition shows them brilliantly. You have one composed position with a beautiful solution. But practical chess is, as I mentioned before, a combination of tactics and positional play. One cannot exist without the other. And 4th, I've seen players who only go tactically and they failed miserably, because in 90% of the cases, they can never get to a tactical position. So what I'm saying more or less is, if you try to be only a tactical player, Even if you have some good games and beautiful experiences, in the end, you'll be losing most of your games because you're not going to be getting to the type of position in which a tactical lineup is available. So here are 4 reasons of why, you know, computers as well as the positional chess are important, and in a way, what's important and what's not. So now one of you asked which engine now is more tactical and positional. I think personally, Komodo is great at positional play, but Stockfish is fantastic at tactics. So these are the 2 engines that I love most: Stockfish for tactics and Komodo for positional play. Using them both to analyze could probably give you most insight on the game, but again, they can't tell you the reasons. Okay, so now is opening more concerned, or the understanding of positional chess is more. I mean, I suppose what you're asking is opening more important or strategy? Strategy is always most important in chess. It impacts the way you play openings and endgames. So now, one of you asked if we want to learn to be good at positional chess, which players' games you would prefer? Well, that's a hard question because all the great players use more or less strong positional play. But if you want to learn from really good positional players, there is Karpov, I think one of the greatest. Bobby Fischer was the one who beautifully combined, positional with tactical chess. I like the games of Mikhail Tal because even though he was an attacking player, in almost 95% of his games, you're going to see a lot of positional preparation before the break happens. And finally, I would like to say the games of Alexander Alekhine, or Alekhine, as it's called in the Western countries, because Alekhine's games abound, of brilliant motives and ideas of positional play. He sets up the tactical combination when the position allows him to, and you're not going to see boring situations. You're going to see interesting setups and ways to exploit the opponent's mistakes in a positional way, which follows and transforms into a tactical sequence. Smyslov is good too, although his are more like challenging. Lasker, yes, Lasker is good too. I mean, every one of these is great. Okay, but then I'm actually saying that those are the ones that I mentioned have made most impression to me. Smyslov and Lasker, and Steinitz was the first one who invented positional chess, like the first world champion. There's so many. I mean, all of them, basically all the 14 world champions, they all are great at positional play. In any case, when it comes down to positional sacrifice, I want you to understand one thing. Taking on the possibility to sacrifice is always risky. You cannot know for sure if this is going to work. I mean, you could expect it will work by just saying, all right, I think that I am getting a good follow-up. I think that I have the possibility to attack him like this. And I believe that I've got a great potential. But in the end of the day, this is just a guess. There are hundreds of lines that you might not have calculated. So even though you give your best in trying to figure out what this leads to, there's always a risk. And that reminds me to a saying I've always admired. One of the greatest players of the early 20th century, Grandmaster Savelli Tartakover, used to say, "The one who sacrifices may lose, but the one who doesn't will certainly lose." And apparently, this metaphor was meant for the players who are scared. So being scared at sacrificing just deprives you of the ability to experience the game and not to know when it's right, not to learn when it's right or wrong to do it. So I do recommend that if you see good proportions of your attack, if you see good prospects and you've calculated as much as you could, seize the day. Bring it on. If it doesn't work, you will know. You will figure out why it doesn't work so you can do it better next time. Now, one of you asked, for endgames, we should follow Capablanca? Sure, you can. Of course. Capablanca is great for endgames. Karpov, too. I mentioned him. Morphy is more about attacking, but again, there are hundreds of great players. Pick the one whose games you like and you can understand. Study his ability, to attack and prepare deeply. More importantly, whenever it comes down to master games, find out how they change their plans, because planning is the most difficult stage to learn. And through master games, I think you can get a good glimpse in what needs to be done so we can plan more successfully or maybe borrow a little bit of that magic that the champion used. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. I do hope you had a good time with my suggestions. And by the way, if you don't know about us, if you joined us late, please don't forget to check the link beneath that video for 60% off of the complete Grandmaster bundle, 14 courses with over 110 training hours. It's a fantastic course. I do recommend it to you. It's only available today for a few hours, and I would definitely recommend you to check it out. I send a link on the on the chat as well. Or if you have any questions, or you want me to send you some of these examples that I was looking at today through, to your email, you can just message me on my email, which is valeri.lilov@gmail.com or tigerlilov.com. So take a look, especially the training package that is being offered is fantastic because it covers practical themes, not something like a computer can show you or you can read in a book, but rather what is the grandmaster understanding on how a positional topic like, say, or tactical sacrifice works. What are the ingredients? You see, I covered a few today, but those are just a few. Imagine 100 hours of listening to grandmaster reasoning and suggestions. Even if you don't pick and remember anything up, you still will get a lot better in your ability to see the patterns and recognize them in your game. So I do recommend you to check it out. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I will be hosting the next broadcast on the 24th at the same time. So tune in for that, and I hope you all have a great weekend.